Hey Vault students, Pastor Bonnie here. I miss seeing you face to face, but thank goodness we have the technology and we can come together at least this way for right now. I want to first thank Whitney for filling in for me last week. I had my second foot surgery and so I've been recovering from that. Thank you for everyone that reached out to me and has been praying for me. I appreciate that a lot. So last week Whitney asked you a few questions as she discussed the movie Overcomer, and this week we're going to continue with that discussion. We talked about John, and if you remember, John was the teacher and the coach, and Thomas was the guy that was blind, and he was Hannah's father. And Thomas asked John an important question. He said, "Who are you?" And John gave him a few answers. He described himself as maybe a dad, a teacher, a coach, and a Christian, a husband. And so he was asking him these questions to get out who he really was. And if I were to ask you that question, I wonder what you would tell me. Maybe some of you would tell me that you're a student, you're a senior, you're a cheerleader, you're a soccer player, a football player, a musician. I would hear different things from each of you because you're each individuals and you do different things. So John was forced to give up some of the things that he described himself as. And the big thing was he was the basketball coach, so he was no longer the basketball coach because there was no longer a team to coach. And as we find ourselves in a similar situation, we are being forced to live life different than we did just 2 weeks ago. We are forced to give up some things that maybe directed or even dictated our lives. There's no school going on right now. Hopefully there'll be some online soon. There's no sports, no drama practice. Things are a little different. And as I've been sitting here, I've been asking myself maybe that same question. Who am I and what's important to me? And I'm finding that as I sit here and think of those things, maybe what was important a few weeks ago isn't so important. And who I am at the core really matters, especially during these times. There is a story in the Bible about a man named Moses. And now Moses, his mother gave him up as a baby to save his life. And so Pharaoh's daughter found him, and instead of growing up poor and in a difficult situation, he grew up in the luxury of a prince. And he would do some things in his life later, and he would have to flee that life, and he would go to live a more ordinary life under the radar. He would get married, but God was working on him. And he was going to have Moses do something extraordinary. Things that Moses thought he was not capable of. He was going to lead the Israelites out of slavery, and that was going to be no small task. He was going to deliver the 10 Commandments, and he was going to be this great leader. But Moses didn't think this was possible because his identity was created by his own self, who he thought he was. He thought it was impossible because Moses didn't speak well. And I'm willing to bet there were people in his life that told him, "No, you'll never be a leader. You cannot talk well, you do not speak well." And so he probably believed that. And sometimes we do that as well, I think. I think we let others dictate our identity as well, or we dictate it by the things we hold ourselves back in. But God created him, so God knew who he really was and what he could do. And that's wonderful news for us today, just as it was wonderful news for Moses. I have a question to ask you, actually kind of two questions. Has the identity that you built for yourself ever hindered your willingness to become who God intended you to be? Or have we let others tell us who we are? Let me say it again. Has the identity that you built for yourself ever hindered your willingness to become who God intended for you to be? Or have we let others tell us who we are? I think if we're being honest, we would all say yes at one time or another. I believe that God is calling us to be more than we ever thought possible, especially in these difficult times that we find ourselves in. I remember when I was a child, I felt God calling me to him. Now, I wasn't raised in a Christian home or even taken to church, and it's really hard to describe, but I had this connection to my Creator. I knew that I belonged to him, and I can't explain that, and I just know that I did. I had no idea what he was calling me to do, but I always wanted to follow God's leading in my life, even when I wasn't going to church. Now that doesn't mean that I haven't messed up along the way, but I kept digging in and seeking His will for my life. And honestly, I'm going to be doing that for a lifetime. I'm going to be seeking God's will for my life. Who does He want me to be? Who does He want me to become? And that's at different stages in my life. Maybe you've never thought of who you are. Maybe you just go through the motions and say, hey, I'm a kid, what does it matter? It matters because if you root your identity in the truth that you were created by God, it's going to direct your life in ways that you could never imagine. Just like Moses, he couldn't imagine that he was ever going to be such an important person, such a great leader, but God knew it. Discovering and living out our identity, defined by God, will be worth every effort that it takes. And the way that we discover it is by reading our Bible. And you knew I was going to say that, didn't you? So I have 2 verses for you this week for you to read. Genesis 1:27. So God created mankind in His own image. In the image of God, He created them, male and female. So that verse is very clear that you were created by God and in His image. The other verse I have for you is Psalms 139, verses 13 and 14. For you created my innermost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well. Another verse telling that God knew you when you were, or before you were born, He knew you. And that's very encouraging, great verses. Read these verses and think about who you are. You are a child of God, and I don't want you to ever forget that. I don't care what the world tells you, I don't care what your friends tell you, or people say to you. You are God's creation, and you are His child. And all those other things stripped away, drama practice, music practice, any of those things, you are a child of God. So don't forget that. So let's stick together during this time. You can leave me comments, or you can questions, you can message me, however you want to contact me. Your parents, most of your parents have my number, so if you have any questions during this time, I'm here for you. I want you to know that. Okay, so now we're going to do something fun. Let's play Quarantine Quazy. So the idea is that you would take a funny picture of yourself doing something funny to pass the time during this time of quarantine. You're in your house. What do you do to pass the time? What's something that you think is funny and we could share with each other? Now you can post these pictures on our Facebook page. If you are not on the Facebook page, have your parent do it. And they can just send a request if they're not already on it, but most parents are already on this Facebook page. I know some of the students aren't, or you can send it to me. The idea is I'm going to pick a funny one and try to send you the best one, a prize to your homes. We'll make the best of this time in quarantine. Love you guys. I can't wait to see you face to face. Take care.